I'm pretty bummed about making this video about quitting the good and the beautiful language arts because we really no means do I want to bash the good and the beautiful company because I believe it's a good company that provides some excellent materials and works for many families, but it just wasn't working the way we wanted it to work for our family. At the time, our son, who's in second grade, was struggling so much with the language arts program that we were using. We were using CLE, Christian Light Education, which I still believe is an excellent program, and I love it so much. But for him, it was very challenging because CLE is very worksheet based, and he would have to have done 4, sometimes even 5 pages of worksheets just to get through a language arts lesson. And it was just too much for him. And at the time, we had an infant and a toddler and several other kids that we needed to homeschool and take care of. And I was spending pretty much half of the day just helping our son get through his language arts. And I just didn't have that kind of time. We also found that our son was struggling with some ADHD tendencies. So a program that is very much workbook pages was not a good fit for his learning ability. In Deja Vu, our son was getting super frustrated with the good and the beautiful and wasn't enjoying it and wanted me to be present through the entire lesson and be sitting there with him through every question and every section. But I just felt so bad I couldn't give him that time. And I totally get it that he was at the age where I need to be present. I need to be guiding him through the lesson. The bigger problem was that he wasn't retaining or learning what he needed to be learning. And what's the point of going through a program when you're not necessarily enjoying it and not even learning? But at least the lessons are shorter. Stay tuned to find out what we are using for our son now that we've stopped the good and the beautiful language arts, and we are also not using CLE. Our daughter, her oldest daughter, loves workbook pages and she loves CLE. And so for her, CLE was a great fit, but not all kids learn the same way and do well with the same program. But unfortunately, our daughter, about halfway through the Good and the Beautiful Language Arts Level 5, she begged us to switch her back to the CLE Language Arts program. In the beginning, we were hesitant about going with the Good and the Beautiful because the creator is from an LDS background, but none of the content, fortunately, has been contradictory to what we believe. I do really love that the Good and the Beautiful is completely scripted. They just have this one course book for each level, and even what the parent needs to say, and all the supplies that you need, and the work that the student needs to do is all there on the same page. And I kind of like that as a teacher, but for our son, that was a little bit of a frustration for him because there were so many words on the page, and he just seeing all the words, it just wasn't helpful for him to progress. It just kind of hindered him from moving on, and it actually made him more frustrated with all the words. He kind of needed the more simpler pages, and CLE actually provides a kind of very simple, very straightforward pages. But of course, for him, worksheets wasn't the thing to do. And eventually, he did realize that he doesn't need to read all the words on the Good and the Beautiful pages, but it still frustrated him. Another part about the Good and the Beautiful I was attracted to was kind of like the unit study approach where you're tying together different subjects into one and kind of interrelating them. So that was really attractive for me, but having all those subjects touched upon in the program just wasn't enough. Our son was not retaining enough for it to be worth continuing with. The Good and the Beautiful is considered all-inclusive. It includes your reading, your grammar and punctuation, spelling, art, geography, writing. So it has all those components, which is great. but it still was just touching upon them rather than really helping our son to really understand. And he needs more like black and white. He's very mathematically minded, so he needs something very black and white in a lot of ways. The company is really generous because they offer free printable level 1 through 5 of language arts on their website, but we have actually never used the printable version, and I would typically just buy from the actual website, sometimes at a discounted price. So we have tried the language arts, obviously, the handwriting, typing, and science. Of those, we love the science. For language arts, we have used the level 5, level 2, level 1, and the level K primer. Let me show you some of the materials as I walk and talk through some of the content. Since we heard that the good and the beautiful is advanced, we went with the level 2 for our son, even though he was entering 3rd grade by age. And even though it was level 2, we didn't finish. We got to lesson 67. And by that point, after really chugging through and trying to enjoy the program, we decided to stop at lesson 67. After years of homeschooling and learning the hard way, we realized that if mom and the child are not enjoying the program, then and it's a struggle and it's not fun anymore, we should probably stop. So unfortunately, we had to give it a break or stop. So the level 2 comes with these 2 readers. First, they have this personal reader, which kind of looks like this. I'm just going to flip through a little bit to show you what it looks like on the inside. Our son didn't mind the stories so much. He didn't really say whether he liked them or not. But our 7-year-old daughter, who happens to be using this level 2 right now because I got it 50% off when it was really cheap, and since it's the old version, she tells me she does not like the stories. The stories are dull to her, they're boring, and there aren't enough problems for the stories to be interesting for her. She wants tragedy and more of a plot. That's why she really enjoys Shakespeare. We've been reading Shakespeare together, and the kids have been enjoying that and figuring out what's going to happen in the plays. And then the level 2 comes with this shared reader. So we would basically take turns reading a paragraph, and then after we finish a story, we would talk about the story. So that's how this one would work. And so the level 2 course book looks like this. And it tells you all the items you need ahead of time. And the course also comes with phonics cards that the children need to memorize the sounds of the letters in the blends. And then after they learn a certain amount of cards, they're supposed to color these cupcakes. And it also has these sight word ladders, and after they master them, they get to color one of these seashells. And each lesson will tell you exactly what to do in terms of whether to go over their sight word ladders or even their phonics cards. And each unit has an overview in the beginning, and the program is divided into 4 units. So it'll show you all the targeted spelling words that are covered, the homophones, the spelling patterns, the supplies you need, the books, and the different principles that are taught. And so this is what I really liked about the program. I like that it was well scripted for the parent. Since, when you're busy, you want it to be open and go and be able to just read straight from the program and go with it. But that was actually a hindrance for our son because he would see all these words on the page, and that would actually make it difficult for, hi guys, I'll be there soon. Oh, like I was saying, our son would get frustrated with all the words on the page. So these scripted parts would actually be distracting for his thinking. He's very black and white. He needs it to be, simple and clear. And so in this lesson, we have a poem, and then there's a picture that goes with the poem. And here's some words to read, and it tells you how to break up the words in order to read them. And here's some spelling practice and homophones, which we really liked, and some targeted spelling words, which we felt were a little random in terms of why they chose these words. And they were not easy words, too. They were very challenging for our son. For instance, this lesson has these words: month, says, what, warm, sure, true. And so we ended up switching to an independent spelling program, even though we were still using the Good and the Beautiful. Although the Good and the Beautiful has a lot of spelling involved, so that spelling is a big component. And I know why they're trying to emphasize spelling, because once you know how to spell, it helps you to become a better reader. And I get that, but it was still very frustrating for him. And then next, we would have a little bit writing assignment where we look at the painting and then we write about it. And then here's the next lesson. It'll tell you exactly what to do. Like, go to your sight word ladders and practice that probably for like 5 to 10 minutes. And then you read these words. And here's some dictation. So I would tell him these words or dictate these words to him and the sentence, and he would have to physically write them. But that was actually very challenging for him because he did not like to write physically, and spelling was very challenging for him to begin with. So here are those targeted spelling words again. And here's some more poetry memorization, and then some questions to go along with the poetry, and some fill in the blanks for the poetry, and the picture that goes with the poem. And here's some spelling rules that are introduced, and some for kinesthetic learners, which is fun to be able to match these different endings for these words to finish off these words. While this was fun for our son, he didn't retain the information. So he did the assignment, but he didn't remember the rule that went with it, the spelling rule. And then here comes all the geography. Jenny Phillips made it fun. She has a little poem that goes with the continents in order to make it a little more entertaining and fun for the child. And then we have more homophone practice, and then it tells you to read your personal reader, and then answer the question that goes with it, and some art. Interspersed, there will be either coloring or painting or drawing throughout. And then here's some nonfiction reading, and then answering questions, and some more reading practice. And here's some more things that you could do, kinesthetically, where you can cover these animals and then read the words and then reveal the animals. And that's kind of fun. We enjoyed that one. And more homophones and editing practice. And then some grammar lessons with nouns. And here it tells you exactly what you need. You need glue, cotton, and some paint. So because we're going to do some painting now. And here's your painting project. And some more homophones and spelling and reading the reader. So it's kind of like that. So then sometimes it comes in where you have to get supplies like a casserole dish and sugar, and then you get to write in the sugar. So those are good for kinesthetic learners. He did struggle a lot with the writing lessons, and I helped him a lot too. I mean, I pretty much wrote down what he said to me, or I would tell him what I think he should write, and I wrote it down for him, and then I read it out back to him. But he would draw pictures, and he did a good job with that. He enjoyed that. So then here's a rocket blast off after you read. You got to read upwards and then blast off. So yeah, that just kind of gives you a gist of level 2. But even though there were many aspects that were covered, actually wasn't enough for our son to continue with the program. He wasn't retaining what he was learning enough, and he was actually more frustrated. I was excited to try The Good and the Beautiful for our oldest, who was entering 5th grade at the time, age-wise, even though she was really enjoying the CLE program, the Christian Light Education program already. So we switched her over, but then maybe halfway through the book, she begged me to switch her back to Christian Light Education for the coming year. So by 4th grade and up, she's in level 5, right? So you should be, Good and the Beautiful expects you to be more independent. So they would have this daily checklist. I'm not sure about level 4, but it says here use with level 5 and 7. So maybe not. So this is the checklist for level 5 and 7. And so each day would have different things the child would go through and check off, which is kind of fun. She did this for a little while, and then she didn't need to do it after, getting used to the program. And so it says here first the sentence dictation. So she would go to this course companion book, actually, and I would have to go and tell her these sentences that she would need to dictate. And that would help with spelling, and it was great and all, but actually in our season with an infant and a toddler, it just was not the best fit because, with CLE, she was so independent and I was totally hands-off. I didn't even grade anything for her. She graded all her quizzes and tests. And with Good and the Beautiful, unfortunately, there was so much for me to be involved with, which would have been great if I had the time and the energy, but it was a little challenging with an infant. So I would have to dictate these sentences to her. So in the end, what happened was she would just read the sentence and write it down herself. So that would be the sentence dictation. And then every other day, she would have to do the states and capital ladders. And that would be in the beginning of this companion book and learn the states and capitals of the United States. And then the other day, when she's not doing those states and capital ladders, she would do poetry memorization. And here are some of the poems. And then the next thing would be either geography or grammar cards. So it would come with all these nice cards. Oops. And this focus was on world and U.S. history or U.S. geography. So she would have to study some of the cards for like 10 minutes. And then the other alternating days, she would be studying the grammar cards, like what is a run-on sentence? And what is a pronoun? And these are just some of the the grammar cards. Okay, then the next thing would be her actual course book. Oh, and also, before I forget to mention, the companion book has all the answers to the course book in the back. And so here's the course book. So lesson 1 would have like parts of speech and tell you what to do. It'll tell you to read in your readers. And then it'll have some more reading and fill in the blanks and more homophones like we saw in level 2. Homophones are fun, so I like that she got to do homophones. And then here she got to study this painting and then write about it. And here's some English grammar practice, accept and accept, the differentiating between those two. And then down here, she got to do some drawing. So throughout the Good and the Beautiful, you might have some drawing or painting, coloring, of course, and some vocabularies also included. And then some more reading and answering questions and writing. Here's some comma usage and some figure out all the parts of speech. And here's some sentence diagramming. And I think level 2, level 2 also has some simple sentence diagramming, which is good because it introduced them to how in how to diagram sentences. And so level 5 has more advanced diagramming, which was helpful because we are in a classical conversations community where we do diagram sentences. So that is helpful to know. And then we have some geography. Yeah, talking about essays and theses. Writing from art and answering questions about art. So that just kind of gives you an idea of what level 5 looks like. I don't remember if I showed you. Okay, so here is the personal reader. I'm just going to do a quick flip through. So she would have to read these stories. The personal reader, and she enjoyed the stories. They weren't her favorite stories, but she did enjoy them. But she is an avid reader, so I'm not surprised. And here's a share reader. So this was another problem. So we would have to take turns reading a paragraph and then talk about the story, but I did not have the energy or the time to sit down and read them. Unfortunately, I wanted to read them because I'm sure the stories are really good and beautiful, but we just didn't have the time. And our daughter couldn't wait for me all the time, and it was kind of like keeping her from moving on. So she would pretty much read on her own. And that's what the shared reader looks like. So in the end, our daughter felt like The Good and the Beautiful had too many moving parts, and she didn't enjoy that. She felt like she could get through a CLE lesson much quicker, even though there were like 4, sometimes 5 pages of worksheets. But she could get through them much quicker than she can get through a lesson of The Good and the Beautiful, even though they look short in the course book, right? But because of all the moving parts, it took her so much time. Okay, lastly, I wanted to quickly show you the Level K primer. We did this one with our 3.5-year-old daughter, and this is what their little reader looks like. So simple and pretty. And she enjoyed it, but it was a little bit challenging for her. She was still really young. And she knew all her letter sounds. She didn't know all the sounds that, all the letters make, the way that The Good and the Beautiful would teach. Like A would say A, ah, and ah. But she knew all her letter sounds generally to begin with, before starting the program. So here's what it looks like on the inside. So lesson 1, it'll tell you exactly what you need, just like any of the other levels. Lesson 1 says to have 12 dry beans, and then she would have to identify these letters on the hearts and tell me if they're uppercase or lowercase, and what sounds they make. And then we put a bean on them. And then here, the same thing, she would just have to identify these letters. And you can trace letters on this page. And here's some vowel practice. More tracing. And here we got to do a little activity, which she really liked. So we had to get cotton balls, glue stick, clothespin, pennies. So she would have to identify the letters and the sounds, and then also identify the vowels and circle the vowels, and then glue on a cotton ball. And I took them off because I wanted to be able to shut the book. So here's some simple word reading practice and tracing letters. And here you get to use clothespins and identify the letters and the sounds and whether they're uppercase or lowercase, and put the clothespins on them. And you get to do a little hot air balloon game on this one. Put 1 penny on the red hot air balloon. Take off the penny. Tell the child to put 2 pennies on the green. Oh, so this one you're just, kind of like this part, the child is just learning about direction and how to follow directions. And here in lesson 5, says you need scissors. So she had to cut out some vowels. I don't have that to show you. And here's some more tracing and matching the first letter sounds. And numbers. She had to identify the numbers. More simple word reading. And here again, you use clothespins. Here you go. She got to cut and paste the different letters. So to match the uppercase and lowercase letters. So she enjoyed that because she loves anything to do with cutting and pasting or coloring or painting, anything like that. Here's some coloring. And here we have some art where she got to identify where is the goat and what letter does goat start with, and point to the girl's hair. And it just helped. This was nice because she got to learn about identifying and really studying a painting. So that I thought that was a neat aspect. And here she had to, we were learning about trying to distinguish between a lowercase d and a lowercase b, because those two letters are so hard for young kids. So we would repeat, D starts with a donut, B starts with a bat. But although she did that several times throughout this course, it didn't really stick, unfortunately. So I'm just kind of showing you. Okay, here's some more art and getting to identify parts of the painting, and also like letter sounds that go with it. What's, point to the dog. What are the sounds in the word dog? And so just kind of, being able to integrate language with the paintings. Here's some sorting that she got to do with vowels. That was fun. So you just kind of get the picture, idea of, connect the dots. Yeah, so you just get a picture. But, after a while, she kind of got bored with this program, unfortunately. Because, it wasn't anything that this program could offer that we couldn't have gotten from a workbook that we can buy somewhere else, like Brain Quest or any regular workbook. But it was nice to try anyway. So that is all I have to show you for the materials. While there are many aspects of the good and the beautiful that I like the geography and the art appreciation, that wasn't enough for us to continue with the program as a family. So for our son, this year, we have been using Easy Grammar for grammar. We like that it starts with prepositions. So it talks about being able to identify the prepositional phrases and pretty much crossing them out so that your sentence looks a lot simpler and shorter. And then we are also using Evan Moore's spelling, which is like, pretty much a spelling list and has all different activities that goes with it. And then they can take a little test at the end of each lesson. And we are using IEW, which our son is doing with our Classical Conversations community. And IEW has been great because it's very structured. And he needs that because his brain is very math-minded. And being able to, it's like, formula, like, A plus B equals C kind of deal where, writing becomes very systematic instead of, just, write about so-and-so or write about this. And for him, that's a little harder. Whenever I try to ask him to write about something, he has a hard time getting things out of his thoughts. For poetry, we have been using this Evan Moore, grades 4 to 5, Understanding Poetry Together as a Family in Our Morning Basket. This has been actually really fun to go through together because it has a lot of classic poetry, like by Walt Whitman and Henry Longfellow. and it has questions and ways to analyze poetry. So we've been doing that together. And another one that we like for art and geography, to get a little bit of that, we have been using from The Good and the Beautiful, this Creative Companion Level 4. It's supposed to include writing, art, and geography, but we don't really do the writing portion. We only go over the art and geography. So it has a lot, we get, this is how we get some art and geography in together in our morning basket. So it has some really beautiful art, just like any other Good and the Beautiful book. And some geography involved. So we're like Italy and New York. So that has been a good one for our family. For reading, we actually decided to stick with CLE because CLE reading is not as worksheet intense, and our son was doing a pretty good job with the reading comprehension, which is kind of lacking in The Good and the Beautiful in our opinion. So he was getting more reading comprehension and doing a good job with CLE. So we just stayed with that. And also CLE reading isn't as worksheet heavy. And the reader also comes with a lot of good stories. So will we use The Good and the Beautiful language arts again? I do like some of the concepts that The Good and the Beautiful presents. So we might try a level for certain one of our kids, depending on the season and the child. But we definitely won't be using it again for our son. I am about to try the kindergarten level with our 4-year-old since I had bought it on sale a while back. So it looks like this. And let's see, here's the reader. And it comes with these little mini books also. I haven't opened it, of course. We do love The Good and the Beautiful science, so we'll continue with those. And the handwriting is okay, so we may continue with those as well. I hope this video was helpful for you to decide whether to try The Good and the Beautiful for your family. Unfortunately, it wasn't the right fit for our family, but it might be a good fit for your family. Please like, subscribe, and share this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.